How you doing, guys? BC90 here with the next video in my Poise showcase series, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Dragonslayer's Greataxe. One awesome weapon in my opinion, which is has been around since vanilla Dark Souls 3 and is still in my opinion one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Now let's go straight into the equipment page here, guys. I've got the Dragonslayer Greataxe +5 here. Get to C scaling in strength and E and dexterity. You need 40 strength to wield it, and at +5 with 50 strength you get a pretty solid 706 AR. Now if you have a look here on the equipment page again, it also gets a D scaling in faith, but I have to say that the faith scaling is actually quite bad. It's negligible here, and I'd say that this weapon works best on a strength build, and that I don't really think you need to worry about faith investment at all, as you still get a pretty impressive AR there, just specializing in strength. So going back over here to my equipment page here, guys, I've got two Blessed Cestus there, +10 as always, to stack with my Sun Princess ring. I've got a heavy broadsword +9 and a Knight's Crossbow +10. Almost full Havels here with an Iron Helm, just so we stay above that 45.81 breakpoint using this Greataxe. So that means we can basically hyper armor trade against every two-handed R1 except for Great Hammers. And you're probably wondering, like, wow, how does he equip everything or all these weapons essentially without fat rolling? And the answer is +3 rings. Now I've got the Chloranthy ring +3 here, the Ring of Favor +3, and the Havels ring +3. And you get all of these rings in the Ringed City. So yeah, these three rings have been pretty much awesome additions to the game in my opinion, and they've really opened up the diversity here in terms of these heavier builds, just so you can obviously put more into these builds, without fat rolling essentially. Now, I did mention that, I'm making a Ringed City blind playthrough series, which I'm working on still. I still haven't finished the Ringed City, I'm still playing through it. I've got a lot of videos that I've already recorded that I still need to edit before I post. So all that, will be coming in soon. I just thought in the meantime, I'll do another Poise showcase video. Now let's get straight into some matches here, guys. Alright, so we're going with the twin greatswords here. Don't be afraid to hyper armor trade with it. Easily doable. So yeah, guys, those new twin greatswords are actually quite strong. I've been seeing a lot of them in PvP lately, but with enough base poise and a heavy weapon with decent hyper armor, you can still hyper armor through those attacks. Obviously, you get less hyper armor from a rolling R1, so I was staggered initially there in my first rolling R1 attack. But as soon as you get into active frames using those regular two-handed R1s, you can safely hyper armor trade with that weapon, as it is still an ultra greatsword class weapon. So its breakpoints are still the same as every other ultra greatsword in its class. And my best advice if you're having trouble fighting those weapons is to use a Great Hammer actually, and get your base poise above 45.85. That'll allow you to comfortably hyper armor trade against everything that weapon throws at you. Including that devastating weapon art. Obviously, you probably will be using, charged R2s or your own weapon art to fight against that and hyper armor through it. But essentially, don't be afraid to trade with it, because you do have enough base poise optimization to hyper armor through it. And as you saw there, because that gentleman was wearing light armor, we were actually able to stagger him instead. Straight on to the next match here, guys. And it's... don't know what that is. Is that a Saint Bident? No, it wasn't a Saint Bident. I apologise for that. It was actually the new ringed spear, I think, which is pretty cool. I haven't actually used it myself, obviously, because I don't have the dexterity requirement to use it. But yeah, just watch out for that weapon art, guys, and you can safely hyper armor through it anyway. But you know, still. Now, what was I going to say before? Can't actually remember, so we'll just keep going. We'll keep fighting here, guys. Straight on to the next match. Now, this is a beast weapon in my opinion. You know, it got a lot of attention early, you know, in Dark Souls 3 early release, but it still hasn't changed. It's still an amazing weapon in my opinion, and especially awesome, you know, when combined with Poise, obviously, now after the new mechanics were put in place. So it's probably one of the best Greataxes you could use, if Greataxes are your preferred weapon. Whoop! Just got to be careful there, as we get pretty low hyper armor using those rolling R1s, as I've mentioned before. Whoop! But again, as soon as you get into those active frames, guys, it is game over. So yeah, guys, I made that distinction actually in my last video, the Poise discussion breaking it all down video, where I mentioned that these breakpoints fluctuate depending on the attack types that you use, and obviously rolling R1s give you less hyper armor than your regular two-handed R1s, when obviously after that your R2s give you more hyper armor than your R1s, and then your weapon art gives you the most hyper armor out of, you know, all your attack types essentially. So really you have to be wary of how much hyper armor you get that will stack with your base Poise value, and match that up with whatever attacks your opponent is using as well. So you have to take that into consideration when you want a hyper armor trade without staggering. So obviously I made a couple mistakes there going in for those rolling R1s, but in the end I wasn't really too concerned because I knew as soon as I got into pancaking mode it was going to be all over anyway. And this weapon hits exceptionally hard. You can usually kill someone in about 3 hits tops, so there is that. Hit me with the light beam there. Gotta watch out for the backstab opening, of course. Whoa! It's a quick light beam, isn't it? And it's game over. So yeah, guys, that's a handy little combo there, you know, with those shield users, essentially. You know, when you break their shield guard and then use that weapon art, you can usually break the guard of those smaller shields. Now, obviously against great shields, you know, I don't think that's actually as easy to do, but with those lighter shields, it's quite easy to guard break them again for a consecutive, you know, counter attack there. So yeah, this weapon is such a beast that, you know, similar to the Great Club, as I've mentioned in my Great Club videos, usually it's all you'll need to take your opponent down, but you know, we do have a fast weapon here in our offhand, and also a crossbow that we can use as needed depending on the situation. So, you know, having that versatility in your build is key in my opinion. And there you go, guys. As soon as you can bait out a trade, it's game over. Now, going back to those dual ultra great swords, I've been seeing a lot of discussion in the forums lately about how overpowered they are. And don't get me wrong, I personally, this is my personal opinion here, guys, so I do think that those weapons are actually very strong. You know, not top tier, but certainly a higher tier, essentially, until people get, you know, used to memorizing its moveset and developing handy counters. But I might add that, you know, when you do have a high poise build with a, you know, a heavy weapon that you're two-handing, it's quite easy to break that weapon's attack chains and hyper armor through it. But you know, that's a pretty specific strategy there for a specific build type, obviously. But I have seen that you know, the weapon itself is actually quite prone to backstabs. You know, it's quite easy to sort of pivot yourself or position yourself to backstab that weapon, essentially. You know, it's also prone to hit and run tactics by, you know, long spears, you know, like any other heavy weapon as well. So there are those tactics as well. You know, I'd call it definitely a powerful weapon, but I wouldn't say it's quite overpowered. I personally haven't had much issues with it, essentially because, you know, I am a high poise build. Whoop! Punished us there with the flail. But you know, we managed to survive that. And obviously, guys, you know, your breakpoints work the best when you're two-handing your weapon. So obviously, when you're one-handing your weapon, it's going to take a little bit more, you know, base poise optimization to tank as effectively. So I would advise that you two-hand all these heavy weapons unless you're 100% certain you can hyper armor through a certain weapon class, just one-handing it. I took my chances there, and I think I did, you know, fairly well. Anyway, but yeah, just remember that, guys, that you know, this breakpoint system and, you know, the new poise mechanics, they're not clear-cut. Essentially, they you know, they rely on a lot of different contingencies. You know, different attack types, optimizations, breakpoints, etc. So, yeah, look, I'm not going to go and explain it all here again. I mean, if you want a more clear and concise breakdown of how these mechanics work, check out my previous video where I talked about it in great depth. But, yeah, we're just going to keep fighting here, guys, because I love this weapon. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I've been using this weapon, actually, throughout my Ringed City playthrough, actually. Whoa! A lot of phantom range there. Gotta be careful. Like I said, with enough hyper armor you can break through those attack chains, essentially. Whoop! Whoa, just got out of the way in time there. And there we go. Game over. So yeah, guys, as long as you're, you know, you don't let your opponent get into, you know, their active frames of that weapon art from that weapon, and you can break it with enough poise, you shouldn't have an issue with it. And I also might add that the weapon art itself from those twin swords is actually quite telegraphed, to be honest. And it's pretty easy to space and get out of its way. So yeah, I mean, for me personally, it just came down to memorizing the moveset as best as I can, just by consistently fighting it, I guess. I've had the, you know, the luck, I guess, to fight that weapon a lot lately. It seems like, you know, most players are trying that weapon out right now. So I guess use this opportunity at the moment to familiarize yourself with the moveset. And, you know, stuff like stamina consumption. I mean, they are ultra great swords, so they're going to chew up a lot of stamina. So, you know, keep an eye out on that and look for your openings. And like I said, for a poise build, a high poise build, it's not really an issue, to be honest. But here you go, here's a rematch. You know, perhaps this guy has the opportunity here to catch us by surprise. Essentially, you never know. Whoop! One thing I might mention though is I do think that the weapon has a lot of range. I don't know if that's due to obviously I don't know if it's due to phantom range or if the weapon itself actually does have a lot of range itself. And there we go. But look guys, as soon as you can bait out a trade, you know, it's game over, really. The only time I would really probably worry about that weapon in particular is if your opponent is wearing full Havels, essentially, because then you know that they're going to have a pretty high base poise optimization themselves. They're probably even hiding a wolf ring, you never know, and they will be able to consistently hyper armor trade against you without staggering themselves. So, you know, watch out for it, I guess, when you see it being utilized by, you know, a high poise build. But otherwise, you know, if you see it utilized by, you know, guys in lighter armor, you're just gonna, yeah, you're gonna hyper armor through it, essentially. And yeah, I do apologize for spending so much time talking about that particular weapon, but I've just been seeing so much discussion about it in the forums lately, especially about it being overpowered. And in my opinion, I don't really think that's the case. Alrighty guys, straight on to the next match. Oh no. A connection error. What do you know? You know, the net code is, you know, exceptionally good. Anyways, guys, you know what? I might wrap up the video here then, I guess. You know, I got a decent amount of fights there, and, you know, there's going to be significant downtime here, logging back in, essentially. But look, I really just wanted to show off the Dragonslayer Greataxe. It's an amazing weapon in my opinion, even now, after all the DLCs. And I think that the Dragonslayer Greataxe works exceptionally well in a high poise build. I think it's, in fact, in my opinion, I actually think it's top tier in a poise build. You know, in terms of other weapons in its class, the Dragonslayer Greataxe is up there with one of the best weapons you can use in your high poise builds. So, you know, if you enjoy that weapon, then definitely utilize it and stick to those breakpoints. And like I mentioned, if you want an actual, you know, more in-depth discussion about these mechanics and the breakpoints that I always talk about, check out my previous video where I go into a lot more depth regarding those mechanics. Anyways guys, I'm going to get right back to playing some more of the Ring City and making more videos for that, and eventually I'll obviously post them up once I've edited them, you know, quite a bit, obviously, because there's obviously going to be downtime when you're playing PvE, right? I mean, there's going to be boring sections and a lot of deaths, etc. So I'll get onto that. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I mean, you know, if you like my content, hit the like button. If you're enjoying, you know, my video series, please subscribe. And, you know, as always, guys, thank you for watching.